interesting moment occurred on Fox News. They were talking about the inflation problem we're dealing with. And one of the people they brought on, who was a former Obama advisor, is clashing with a Trump advisor. And within this conversation, the very real fact that it seems people on the right, as of now, have a very hard time of recognizing a lot of the stimulus spending that was done before Biden got in office. Now, also there was a lot of stimulus under Biden. But can we recognize that we were in a crisis and almost everyone was on the same page that the only way you don't cause mass devastation in that type of economic downturn is to pump money in the economy? And it's hard to tell at that moment exactly how much you should pump. And then after you realize, oh, maybe we a little bit overdid it or a little underdid it, whatever it is. And this Obama advisor pretty effectively makes that point on Fox News, as you'll see here.
My explanation is that we spent and borrowed and printed $4 trillion through all of these massive spending bills. And Republicans, to their credit, for the most part, opposed these. Most of them were passed with only Democratic votes. And to tie this to these upcoming elections, I think it's one of the reasons Democrats are going to face a very high price in November, because it's not complicated, in my opinion, to connect the dots between these massive spending bills, multi-trillions, and the fact that we have inflation. Because you dump all that money in the economy, that's going to cause prices to rise.
5 of the $7.5 trillion were passed under Donald Trump. So how do you reconcile that?
Well, look, there was, and by the way, I was opposed to most of those spending bills, but you're right. Republicans are not blameless here, Martha. I mean, Lawson is right here. The politicians of both parties have spent too much money. But
so, what's the argument against the Democrats then? That's bizarre. Now, we're going to look at specifics. And the general point he's making that a lot was done under Trump and then also some under Biden is correct. The specific figures he cited will compare to the really here's just strictly what was stimulus packages, and you'll see. But before we do that, can we also recognize, as we talked about on a previous show, that based on recent analysis that Katie Porter highlighted, over 50%, over half of the inflation that we're experiencing right now is corporate profits. And that's not, every single time that's the case. Nope. I think the figure she cited was 11.4% in previous inflation, okay? Now it's up to over half in corporate profits. Meaning, corporations didn't just raise their prices to match inflation. They raised their prices way beyond what they had to. And that is actually much of the price stress that we're under is due to that. And this is broadly understood now, or at least it's getting more, whereas before it seemed the only thing people want to point at is the spending of the government. No, here's what happened. The government responded as government should in an economic downturn and pumped a lot of money in the economy. Now, why do I say they should? I think you need to understand what happens when you don't do that. If we would have locked everyone in their houses, again, to protect them from COVID and said, stop working and all these things, but put no money in the economy, we would have caused an even worse economic crisis that would have been much longer lasting. But instead, we were actually able to flip back on the economy pretty quickly because we kind of held it up artificially for a while there. But that is going to cause some weird economic outcomes to be dealt with. But I think they were going to be reasonable. And then you slap on top of that, plus, half of it is now corporate profits, and you get into a little bit outrageous world. So with that being said, let's take a look here at the 3 stimulus packages passed for the pandemic. The first one under Trump was total $2.2 trillion. The second one under Trump was $900 billion, so we can just call that a trillion. So that puts you up to around $3 trillion. And then Biden comes in and passes a $2 trillion one. So when you're talking about COVID stimulus / economic revival recovery money, Trump did spend more. But I'm not even criticizing for that. The only thing I criticize is what the money was spent on. The Biden package did a better job of directing the money towards people who actually need it, whereas especially the first one, if I'm not mistaken, but despite the specifics of that, the ones done under Trump, a lot went towards people, corporations who didn't actually need the banks. And I think that could have been done in a lot better of a way where just the people who really needed it got it. But doesn't matter. Point is, you spend a lot of money to get out of crisis, and sometimes that causes inflation, but we wouldn't be experiencing nearly the inflation we're experiencing now if it wasn't for corporate profits. So we need to talk about how do we address that. And I can tell you, it ain't going to be the Republican Party reeling in the corporations. All they want to do is cut the taxes for them more and give them more power. So very, very interesting stuff there. And hopefully that message is heard by some people before Election Day.